and you actually wrote an article titled "What Should We Do If Extraterrestrials Show Up?" So I will ask you, what do you anticipate our first encounter to be like? What should we do if another civilization made it known on a global scale that like we're here, we're showing up, and because a lot of people think it may have already happened, some people think it will never happen. So what do you think we should do?
Well, first I should say that if you're not allowing yourself to find wonderful things, you will never discover them. So the worst that can happen is for all the scientists to ridicule this possibility of doing space archaeology, looking for relics coming close to Earth, so that we will never search for them. It's just like saying everything is rocks out there. And to me, that is just like the mentality of a caveman that when presented with a cell phone would say that's a shiny rock. Because the caveman is used to playing with rocks all of his life. And that would be unfortunate, because that would be a self-fulfilling prophecy, like stepping on the grass and saying, like, look, it doesn't grow. The alternative would be to fund the search for objects that may be plastic bottles among all the rocks that we find on the beach, and we should fund such a search at the level that we are funding searches for dark matter, the matter that makes the universe, that is the biggest constituent in the universe. So we don't know what it is. There is 5 times more mass in matter that is invisible compared to ordinary matter. We don't know what its nature is, and we are investing in trying to find what it's made of. And that frankly will have very little impact on our private lives, but we should at least invest similar amounts of funds in research targeting interstellar objects, trying to figure out what they are, and every time we see something different that looks like Oumuamua and doesn't look like Borisov, we should get more evidence about it. So I think, the interstellar travel takes a long time. It's very difficult for biological creatures like ourselves, astronauts, or animals to survive such a long journey. They're not designed for that. We would suffer a lot of damage to our body from cosmic rays, from other risks in space. So we are not fit for very extended journeys that would take a very long time through space. And therefore, I think most likely, if we find evidence for another intelligent civilization, it would be in the form of equipment or signals that indicate equipment. So the point to recognize is if there were starshot probes going through the solar system, that weigh 1 gram, like we are designing now, we would not recognize them. They would move too fast, the fraction of the speed of light. When astronomers see something moving so fast across the sky, they would dismiss it. And frankly, they would not even see it, because if the size of the object is the size of a person, a few meters, it doesn't reflect enough sunlight for it to be noticed by existing survey telescopes. So it's quite possible that there are lots of things flying around that we haven't yet noticed, either because we are not sensitive enough, we don't have telescopes sensitive enough, or because we dismissed those. I can give you an example that when I was very young, when I started doing astrophysics, I remember going to the library and looking at volumes of the Astrophysical Journal, the main journal of astrophysics, and all volumes had photographs of clusters of galaxies that had big giant arcs of light around them, and nobody paid attention. There were these arcs and people just ignored them, even though it was on the photographs. And in the 1980s, suddenly the subject of gravitational lensing became popular, even though Einstein already discussed it 40 years earlier. But then it became sort of popular in the 1980s, and then people said, oh, these arcs around clusters of galaxies are just, the gravitationally lensed images of background galaxies that are being stretched into an arc. And suddenly they noticed something that was already documented
Mm.
and said, oh, that is a gravitationally lensed image of a background galaxy. So what
Mm.
I'm trying to say is, the data sometimes is not interpreted. And if you're not allowing yourself to look for something unusual, you don't find it. So claiming that you need extraordinary evidence, it's not in existence, is the wrong approach,
Mm-hmm.
because if you're not looking for it, you will never find it.
So if that evidence, if we come upon conclusive evidence that another alien civilization is making contact with us or trying to make contact with us, what should we do? What do you think should be the next steps of humanity when we have something that we agree upon from a scientific analysis that yes, this is not of Earth for almost certain, and now we need to proceed with the next steps? What would you say we should do?
Right. So, well, if we detect signal or find a piece of equipment that indicates another
Mm-hmm.
civilization, it would be prudent to figure out what the purpose of this was, and what does it imply about the intentions of the other civilization. Because when you go in the wilderness, you want to listen and figure out if there are predators out there, and that could risk your existence. And so if it happens, well, first of all, you want to understand what the equipment is doing, and or if there is a signal, what does it mean? And that brings a host of questions about communication, because uh, we we don't know their language, and we need to figure it out. And it's just like breaking codes, in the military, when you have another nation transmitting signals that are coded, and you don't know the code, and you want to break it. You need the same skills as trying to figure out a language that is foreign, and the meaning behind the language. So that would be really fascinating. It will be, I call this frontier astrolinguistics, trying to figure out what it means. What is the meaning
Yeah.
behind the signal that you found? And
Yeah.
we'll have to
That's a
work on that.
that's a fascinating thing to think about, that there will be a field of study in the future where people are trying to become competent at interpreting other languages that aren't of this earth, or other signals, and that's what people do. You get a degree in astrolinguists, which it seems crazy to think about now, but I mean, why not? If we are making contact, or other civilizations are making contact with us, the best thing we could do would be to try to interpret that data as quickly and as efficiently as possible, so that we can see the nature of it. Is it harmful? Is it hostile? Is it positive? Is it in between? So yeah, that's
Right.
fascinating to think about.
Exactly, and that will not be the only new field. There would be astroarchaeology, or space archaeology. There would be a lot of interesting new fields opened up. And by the way, there is a film related to this issue of communication called Arrival. And
Yes.
I was fortunate, over the past few months. I had a lot of conversations with artists, jazz musicians, filmmakers, all kinds of writers. One of the filmmakers was the producer of Arrival, and
Wow.
who was quite interested. He read my book, Extraterrestrial, and was interested in discussing it. And I told him that that was my favorite film, Arrival, because it shows this problem, the philosophical issues associated with interpreting the language of aliens. And in fact, it's not just the language; it's also the means by which the words are delivered, or the communication is delivered. Which if you've seen the film, it's actually ink or some
Yes.
visual
Yeah.
content that you have to figure out. And yeah, I was actually quite flattered that he paid attention to my book, and found it interesting, and I expressed my admiration to the film. And By the way, as a result of all these conversations, I realized that there are a lot of similarities between innovation in arts and innovation in science. And we benefit from each other. And in both cases, when you have innovative ideas, they are not appreciated immediately. It takes time because it takes people out of their comfort zone. And however, I should say in my case, I had a tremendous positive response from the public, from people that are not engaged in academia, and especially young people from all over the world. And I get a lot of messages every day about my book, and that gives me a thrill, because I do realize that eventually these young people will occupy the halls of academia, and they may lead to a change in the culture that we have right now.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. As a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full, uncut, 2+ hour episodes of the Auxoro podcast, plus gain access to 2 bonus episodes every month at auxoro.supercast.tech. Link is also in the description. Thank you so much for supporting quality content from independent creators like myself. Cheers.